What's up everybody, welcome back to Boot Wizard, and this is part 2 of our 10 biggest mistakes ever made by brands with their football boots. If you haven't seen part 1, then do click just above my head somewhere where you'll be able to check that out before we jump into the top 5. Of course, get subscribed to the channel for more content like this, as well as liking the video and letting me know if you think there's anything I've missed out by commenting down below. You can also support us at patreon.com/bootwizard, and for the rest of the month we are still being supported by Soccer Supplement, and if you use the code UPMyGame5 you can get 20% off pretty much anything on the Soccer Supplement website. But that's everything, let's jump into it. What are the top 5 biggest mistakes ever made by brands with their football boots? I gave an honourable mention to the way that Adidas seemed to be able to poke the Pred head community just in the right place to make them explode with rage. Well, no boot or boot collection did that more than when Adidas launched the Adidas Revenge Pack. The Revenge Pack was a limited edition release of a lot of your old Adidas classic favourites, including the Mania and the Accelerator. The problem with these? They didn't release them with leather uppers. If you ask most Pred heads what are the key components for a Predator, they're a striking element, a fold-over tongue, and a leather upper. Releasing such revered boots that had all of these elements, particularly the leather upper, in a synthetic variation, really riled people up the wrong way. Over time, the collectability of this particular pack has actually gone up, and they are seen as quite a desirable thing to have for collectors. But at the time, they certainly rubbed some people up the wrong way, and if you ask pretty much any Predator collector, they will tell you that this is the worst thing that they could have done with a re-release in a limited edition. New Balance are a company that came into the football boot world fairly recently, taking over from Warrior, a company that they also owned. They gradually phased out Warrior and brought in New Balance, and in order to do that, they built up hype over 2 boots that were going to be released over almost 2 years. They gradually staged information, staged releases, staged images of the boots coming out to really get everybody hyped for these boots. These boots were to be the Tequila one, which I've already mentioned that I think is fantastic, and the Furon one, their flagship speed boot line. And you could argue that no line is more important to any brand than their speed boot. A lineal successor to what is a reasonably good Warrior boot in the Superheat, the Furon was released to groans. The Furon 1 is once again one of the worst boots that you can possibly go and pick up, especially when you've spent so long trying to hype up this boot and hype up the idea that New Balance are going to be a force in the football boot world. The damage to New Balance's reputation was absolutely catastrophic here, and when you combine that with the aforementioned Vizaro 2, New Balance had a lot of recovery to make, and you can even make the point that they've probably only just managed to do it now with the fact that their new Furon line, the V6 and the V6 Plus, is actually excellent. They even had at one point the Furon V6 and the Tequila V2 as 2 very viable options for people to go out and buy. New Balance were building towards a force. Then they released this. I hate this. I hate this boot so much. The Furon 1, terrible and reputation destroying. This entry, we're going to talk about 2 companies that arguably could have made an enormous mistake by simply not getting involved in something, and another company that could have made an enormous mistake until just at the last minute they changed their mind and arguably changed football at the same time. I am of course talking about the Adidas Predator. Craig Johnson went to multiple companies with this idea of a football boot that had a grippy surface. There is a whole story behind this which I'll get into in another video, so be sure to get subscribed for that. But he pitched this idea to Nike, to Reebok, to Adidas, and they all rejected him. We of course know these days that Adidas did eventually take up the Predator, and it is now synonymous with Adidas being one of the biggest names in football boots alongside the Mercurial, but they rejected it multiple times before Johnson himself went to Bayern Munich, went to Franz Beckenbauer and got him and his players to try out these boots and filmed them using it and enjoying it before finally convincing Adidas to take it on board. So Adidas almost made an enormous error by turning down the Predator concept. Where would we be today without that? Nike, Reebok, and I'm sure multiple other companies potentially making the mistake of a lifetime by turning down the Predator. Where would we be today if Reebok or Nike had picked up this Predator idea? What would the football boot world look like? Maybe Nike would be in possession of the Predator and the Mercurial, or would the Mercurial never have happened? There's a lot of what ifs around this, but I don't think it can really be argued that turning down one of the most iconic boots of all time can be anything other than a mistake for every company that turned it down. My next pick you might see as being a little bit harsh because I've gone for the Puma Evospeed SL, and if you've watched the channel for a while, you know that that's actually a boot that I really like. So why is this number 2 on the biggest mistakes brands have ever made list? Well, quite simply because the Evospeed SL is still damaging Puma's reputation to this day. Puma released a boot where they openly advertised that the boot would only last for 10 games. It wasn't for your training days, it was for your best days. They charged an absolute premium price for a boot with known durability issues that they actively advertised. Essentially going, here, give us 250 euros, this boot will last 10 games if you're lucky, and then you'll have to buy a new pair. Alongside the SL, there was the SLS, which was a more durable version, but honestly, a bit of an uninspiring boot and not one that I liked that much. As you might imagine, nobody went out and picked up the Evospeed SL, because who has the kind of money to drop on a boot that's just not going to last, and you know before you go and pick that up? Durability is a huge issue in general, and advertising you have poor durability is a really stupid thing to do. Puma still suffer to this day with the idea that their boots aren't the most durable, and they suffered particularly with the release of the Puma Ultra SL, where people immediately associated that with the Evospeed SL, assumed it's gonna break, assumed that it's just not a good boot. But that immediate association is still damaging Puma all these years later. At number 1, it couldn't really be anything else, could it? Because it's still spoken about today as an absolute travesty and one of the worst, if not the worst, second generations of boots to ever be released. We're of course talking about the Hypervenom 2. The Hypervenom Phantom 1 is revered to this day for its upper and for the touch and feel that it gave you on the ball, even down to the fact where Nike have tried to replicate that in some degree with the brand new Phantom GT and tap into the magic that was the Hypervenom 1 and its Nike Skin upper. The Hypervenom 1 had a huge problem, however. It was durability. That Nike Skin upper would separate, and it also didn't have the greatest responsiveness. In order to fix that, for the Hypervenom Phantom 2, Nike reworked the upper. They added Brio cables, they changed the upper material, and essentially what you got with the 2 was a brick. This lacked all of the touch and feel of the Hypervenom 1, all of the soft, moldable, supple nature of the Hypervenom 1, and what you ended up with was in essence a boot that just not many people liked, and even if you did like it, there's not really any competition when you compare it to what you got from the Hypervenom Phantom 1. You remember earlier when we spoke about how they had to change the opus midway through, about how Under Armour had to ditch the zipper boot halfway through in order to save a line? Well, guess what? Hypervenom 2, of course, that had to be saved halfway through. The initial upper was dropped and the old Nike Skin upper was added with some additional Brio cables. The durability issues were still there, but it was a much superior boot to the previous set of blocks that you were running around with on your feet with the initial launch. And that is my top 5. Let me know down in the comments if there's anything that you disagree with or anything you think that I have missed. Remember, this isn't just about the worst boots, it's about mistakes that have been made. Of course, remember to like this video if you have enjoyed it, and please get subscribed to Boot Wizard so that you can help out the channel and get more amazing content. If you do want to help us out, patreon.com/bootwizard is the place to go, as well as getting your 20% off at Soccer Supplement for the remainder of the month with the code UPMyGame5. But that's all from me here today. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon.